Hi, this is Adam Eliel Berkowitz from Israel 365 News. I'm here today with a very interesting gentleman. His name is Amit Barak. He's running the Jerusalemite Initiative, which is something that not too many people hear about. It's a critically important initiative that is working to integrate Arab Christians in Israel into Israeli culture, which is much more important than people realize, and it's a burning issue. I'd like to remind everyone this is a live feed, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask your questions, and we'll try to relate to them throughout the broadcast. So Amit Barak from the Jerusalemite Initiative. Hi, Amit.
Hi, good evening here in Israel.
What I'd like to start off with is people, I don't think people understand what an Israeli Christian is. It's absolutely not the same as European Christians or American Christians. It's a very different thing. The Middle Eastern, in general, the Middle Eastern Christians are a very deep and intense story unto themselves. So, could you tell us a little bit about the Israeli Christians?
First, I think we should remember that they are actually the first or the original Christians, the Christians in the Middle East.
That makes
And this
sense.
is this is something we should remember. This is something the Christian world should remember, because when we saw what's happening, when we saw the persecution that happened to Christians in the Middle East, mostly in Syria and Iraq, but also in Egypt, in the Palestinian Authority, in Libya, the Christian world should remember that if there will be no Christians in the Middle East, so something will be missing with the roots and with the historical roots of Christianity.
Wow.
Because Christians who lives here in Israel, in the Holy Land, in the Middle East, they are the descendants of the first Christians. And if we
They're actually
divide,
they're actually the most persecuted religious group in the world today,
right,
which also is kind of under the radar. People aren't hearing about it. You recently did a protest. Where were the Christians being persecuted?
in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, it's less today, but it used to be for many years. Still in Africa, in Palestinian Authority, Libya, we saw there in the beginning of the 20th century. There used to be 20% of the population in the Middle East, the Christians. Today they are only
Wow.
4%.
And even especially, most Christians in America, they think of Christianity in Israel, they think of Bethlehem. And Bethlehem used to be how much? Bethlehem has also lost a lot of its Christian
Yeah,
population in nature.
Bethlehem used to be Christian city, and today they
I
are
think it's down to
speaking
20%,
that
something like that.
even less. It's down to 10%. Some would say 15. Some would say even 2%. But it's less. It's not a Christian city anymore, and they are being persecuted, and that's the
If,
situation.
if you went to Bethlehem last week, there wouldn't have been Christmas. That's pretty clear. Um, that's so. Tell me a little bit the Christians in Israel, the Christian Arabs. Um, are they more integrated? Like if you're walking around Jerusalem, if you're walking around Tel Aviv, are they more part of Israeli society or are they more part of the Palestinian society?
So Christians in Jerusalem, it's a different story, and that's what we focus on with the Jerusalemites Initiative organizations. But if we talk about Christians in the north, in the Galilee, in Haifa, if we talk about Christians in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, in the center of Israel, I think most of the Christians would say or would act as Israelis. But if you take an Israeli, I call them my Arabic speaking Christians. I don't call them a Christian Arab, because of the facts of the historical roots. We can speak about it later. But if you ask them what you are, if you take few Christians and ask them to define themselves, you will get different answers. Some would say they are Israeli Christians, Palestinian Christian, Arab Israeli Christians, Aramean Christian. You will get different various of answers to that questions, but I think most of them would still say they are Israelis, or even if they will not say Israelis, they are citizens of Israel, and they enjoy the democracy, the freedom of worship, and freedom of speech, security, and everything.
Do the Israeli Arab Christians, do they do the army?
No, most of them not. So the Israeli law, by the Israeli law, only Jews, Druze, and Cherkessians are obligated to serve. Arabs, Muslims, and Christians, they are not. They are not part of this law. They can volunteer if they want. So in recent years, since 2012, there are more and more Christians that prefer to volunteer. In 2012, there was a change among the Arabic-speaking Christians in Israel. They saw the persecutions against Christians in the Middle East, and they woke up, many of them, but not all. Father Gabriel Nadaf, a Greek Orthodox priest from Nazareth, he was leading a movement and called the Christians, the young Christians, to stand up loud and clear and in public, and to volunteer to the IDF in order to defend Israel, which is also their home, their homeland. And he said, look what's happening with our brothers and sisters in the Middle East. We should do whatever we can in order to defend Israel and defend ourselves. And more and more decided to make this step, but it's still not the majority. Still not the majority.
And that's a big way to become part of Israeli culture, is to do the army. It makes you more Israeli.
Of course, that was also one of the reasons. They woke up because of the persecution against the Christians, but they also, one of the reasons was to receive this ticket into the Israeli society. Because if you served in the IDF or if you did a national civil service, you become part of the Israeli society, like the majority, like the Jewish majority of the society. So that was also an important reason. It's to feel part of the place you was born in and you are growing up in.
So when American Christians hear about a Christian IDF soldier who either did something very heroic and got a medal or became an officer or something like that, they're actually hearing about one of the first Christians, a Christian Arab Israeli, and those are the people who are doing the amazing thing. Is there would you say there's a strong connection between the U.S. Christians and the Christians overseas and the Christians in the Middle East?
With some of them, yes, but I think Christians in the States, they do not understand the Christians here. I mean, it's different. Usually, it's different denominations, and also the Christians in Israel are very small number. They are even not 2%, maybe 2% of the Israeli society. 18,000, that's it. 18,000. It's a small minority. So many people around the world, also pilgrims that come and visit Israel, many of them are surprised when they meet Christians here, Arabic-speaking Christians. They're actually surprised that there are Christians living in Israel, because by the image you get from the media, you have Jews here and you have Muslims, and they're clashing all day long. So suddenly they find also Arabic-speaking Christians in Israel live in freedom. It's something that many people around the world don't know, and the pro-Israeli and evangelical Christians in the state they should understand that it's very important to support the Christians that are making the change, bringing the change, taking the step, and wants to become equal part of the Israeli society, of the state of Israel, with serving the IDF and with integrating in all aspects and helping building the state of Israel and the Israeli society, and also helping to fix or to build the things better, but in partnership with the Jews, not sitting on the fence, or of course not standing on the other side and just criticize, but together to try make things here together, to see themselves part of Israel.
I can think of several reasons why it's especially important to support the Israeli Arab Christians. One is they've been here literally for almost as long as the Jews have been gone, or they were here 2,000 years ago when we left, and they're still here. So they're a very important part of our history, that's for sure. And also, they're an oppressed minority. So I think it's very, very important to connect to them, to support them as an oppressed minority. And they're actually doing better in Israel than anywhere else in the Middle East, unfortunately. We know what's happening in Egypt. There have been bombings in churches. There have been long pilgrimages, mass pilgrimages that have been attacked by the PIJ, by the Islamic Jihad. This is an oppressed minority, and if Israel is going to stand up for an oppressed minority, especially an oppressed minority we have a deep historical connection with, then we should certainly connect with them. What is your initiative doing for these Christians?
So we focus on the Christian community in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, there are around 13,000 Christians. That's all.
That's most of them.
Yeah, that's
so,
13.
Wow.
No, that's not most of them. It's just that's
okay.
13.
I'm sorry.
Okay, maybe I was wrong.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the 13,000. 13,000.
13,000 in Israel. You have overall 180,000.
Oh gosh,
180.
Oh,
Yeah,
180.
Yeah.
That's not most of them. I'm sorry. Math clearly
okay.
Not my subject. Okay.
I fixed my mistake. Yes, that's okay. The numbers. It's one of the smallest actually. But in Jerusalem, Christians in Jerusalem. So in Jerusalem, we have to understand that first of all, we know this holy and emotional city. Everything is emotional here, and it's politics. Everything is involved politics here. So Christians here were actually under the Jordanian occupation until 1967. And when Israel liberated Jerusalem in 1967, they became under Israel government. But yet, not many of them choose to receive a citizenship.
Really?
Yes. So many of them are not citizens of Israel. They are residents of Israel. They can vote to the municipality, to the mayor, but they can't vote to the Knesset.
Why did they choose not to be citizens? Is there a reason?
Many of the Arabs in what's called East Jerusalem are like this. You can apply for a process and receive your citizenships. It's a long time, it's a long process, but many, I think that it's the political reasons. You know, when Israel liberated Jerusalem, like it's liberated the Golan Heights and Judea and Samaria, when things are still not clear, Israel is not claiming sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. And here and there, you can even sometimes hear different political, different programs, different plans talking about Jerusalem to be the capital of the Palestinian state. So they feel unsafe, because if they will become Israelis and suddenly, I don't know who will be on control here in Israel, and I don't even want to think about it, but decide to give part of Jerusalem to the Palestinians, and Christians will be there. They put their life in danger.
The
Also,
Palestinians are not nice people.
Yes,
there's
and
actually people may not be aware. There's what's called in the Palestinian society. There's what's called the anti-normalization movement. What that means is it's a movement that opposes normalizing relations between the Palestinians and Israel. They don't want the Palestinians to live in peace in an Israeli society. So any Palestinians, and even Christian, especially Christian Arabs, who try to integrate into Israeli culture, try to live with the Israelis, there will be vengeance taken out on them, unfortunately. I've seen this in a lot of initiatives that are peace initiatives between Jews and Muslims, between Jews and Christians, between Arabs and Christians. There's a lot of so Joshua asked a question: are there Christians in East Jerusalem who identify as Palestinian?
Yes, of course.
Wow.
That's also, yes. You know, still many of them identified as Palestinians. Yes. So one of the reasons is that reason that they're still afraid. There's another reason that every Christian in Jerusalem, he has a family in Bethlehem, Bet Sahur, in Ramallah. So it's again, they're afraid to identify as Israelis. And it's also politics. Everything in Jerusalem, and some of them really feel Palestinians, some of them not. It's again, it's battle of ideas, and what we are trying to do is to make them understand that the future is with Israel, and to speak with them about their historical roots, the roots of the Christians in the Holy Land. They are not Palestinian. They are not even Arabs. The historical roots.
That's very true. The Arab refers to ethnically someone who's descended from someone who came from the Arabian Peninsula, and many of these people absolutely are not. They are very indigenous to Israel, which is not the Arabian Peninsula. So they really are our brothers in a very real ethnic way, I think.
Yes, If I divide the Christians in Israel, including in Jerusalem, and including in Christians who live under the Palestinian Authority in Bethlehem, I can divide them to three groups. You have the ancient group, the medieval, and the new group. The ancient Christians are actually descendants of the first Judeo-Christians, we can say. They're actually descendants of Jews. I don't know that if you can find a Christian family today that can prove that they are descendants of Jews, but that's how it's begun here. So that's the first group, and the second are tribes, Aramean tribes, and tribes who used to live in the area that accept Christianity before it was the religion of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and they used to live here. And then when Christianity was the religion of the Byzantine Empire, they used to live here also. The first time we begin to hear about the term Christian Arab is only after the Muslim conquered the area and erased the spoken language, the lingua franca lingua, the the Aramaic. That was the language that also Jews and also Christians spoke here.
That's kind of funny, because the only Aramaic I know is from when I learned Talmud. So it's almost like I'm connected to these Christians through the Talmud. Which is kind of unusual. So what is the Jerusalemite Initiative doing to connect with these Christians?
So what we do mostly is to make them understand, to open the door for them, to give them the opportunity to know the Israeli society and the benefits they can have from the state of Israel. So in 2018, after I done my work with the Christians in the Galilee with Father Gabriel Nadaf, I used to work with him for 5 years. And during that time, I met Elias Zarina, the guy, my partner that we found together Jerusalemites Initiative. He is from the Christian Quarter. And in 2010, we decided that we should try and bring this process, this change that the Christians in the north of Israel are being through. We decided to bring it to Jerusalem, but in a slow motion, step by step, because again, things here with Christians are different. And we had several meetings with Christians in Jerusalem, with different youth group, with different Christian leaders, also even with some people inside the churches, but very, very underground, secretly. And we tried to understand if they want, if we should go for it or not, and we try to understand what do they need. So what we learned is that first they need to speak Hebrew, because unlike Christians in the north of Israel, in the center of Israel, that study Hebrew in schools, or the part of the state of Israel since 1948, in Jerusalem, most of them don't study Hebrew. They don't learn in schools Hebrew. Schools of the churches, you have the private school of the churches, which are considered very, very good schools all over Israel. But in Jerusalem, they prefer to teach them different languages. You know, every school, the language is depends on the church that the schools belong to. So they learn French or German, or Latin or Spanish. And if they learn Hebrew, it's not on a high level. And some schools, or even most of them, they don't teach Hebrew at all. So if you was born here in Israel, in Jerusalem, if you grow up here and you don't speak the language, you have a huge barrier. You cannot become part.
You won't get a job.
You won't get a job. You won't be able to go to study in university. And then where do you go study? You go study in Bethlehem, and you go study in Birzeit, and then you become a Palestinian. So what we are doing now is we are providing Hebrew courses, Hebrew lessons. We have some.
I met a young man a couple weeks ago who was one of these people. He lived in Jerusalem. He went to study overseas. He went to study, I forget where, but at an English-speaking country, because he spoke English, but he didn't speak Hebrew. He and I were speaking in English. Really nice guy. And I said to him, you'd make a much better newscaster than I, because you speak Arabic, you speak English. He's like, yeah, but I don't speak Hebrew.
Yeah,
and he was born here and grew up here. And it's stunning. I just looked at him. I'm like, you don't speak Hebrew. You were born here. It's a little hard to believe. And the barrier, forget about it. You can't work in anything if you don't speak Hebrew.
You can't work, and if you have the money, you can study abroad. But if you don't have, if your family don't have, so you have to study in Bethlehem University or in Birzeit University, and that's it. And that's how they strengthen your Palestinian identity and not Israeli identity, and you're also losing your roots, really. What you hear that Jesus was a Palestinian.
I just wrote an article about that today. The BBC made a radio program last week with this whole thing that we're hearing more and more. There are even people in the Democratic Party in America who are saying this. Strangely enough, there's a pastor, Warnock, who's running for the Senate, who said Jesus was a Palestinian. He said Jesus was a Palestinian prophet, which is actually straight from the Quran, which is kind of scary. But it's a horrible narrative that not only is revisionist, changing history, but it's a way of canceling out Israel's place in Israel, Israel's place in this region, while trying to replace it with the Palestinians. And it's a horrible thing. I can't help but think, maybe I'm too philosophical, but I think there can be a beautiful thing where Christians from, let's say, America connect with Christians here who at one point, their ancestors, they were the people who had a direct connection with the very beginnings of Christianity. Anything that you read about in the Old Testament about Christianity, or I'm sorry, in the New Testament about Christianity, well, these are the people that that it's talking about.
That's it, exactly.
So connecting with the Israeli Christians and even the other Christians in the Middle East is really connecting to the New Testament. As a Jewish Israeli, I see it as connecting to a very integral part of Israeli history. It's really there. I'm sorry. So, Amit, I'd actually, if it's okay with you, I'd like to end it here. We've been, it's actually, but I'd like to have you back. And I'd like also to speak with Elias about the amazing things they're doing, because this is really a huge initiative to try to connect. We're used to connecting American evangelicals with Israel, but this is exactly the opposite. It's Israel connecting to the original Christians, which is really very inspiring.
Yeah.
So,
just
I'm sorry, yeah?
One sentence I want to say that I think the evangelicals should play a bigger role in this effort. Absolutely. To help us make and build this bridge and bring the Christians closer to Israel, closer to the Bible, closer to their historical roots and their real identity. And I used to work with Father Gabriel Nadaf, but he's back to his church, and you cannot find religious leaders, you cannot find priests and pastors here that support this, that are speaking in public. They're afraid. So Christians that volunteer for the idea, for example, their lack of spiritual support, and this is also something that evangelicals, pastors can do.
Okay, great. So really, Amit, thank you so much. Like I said, Elias was sick. So he couldn't make it with us today. We wanted to speak to him. Hopefully we'll bring both Amit and Elias back together as soon as Elias is feeling better, and we can talk a little bit more about the unique Israeli Christians, the original Christians who are still in Israel. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you, Amit. We'll be in touch with you about that. So Josh, if you can, I think it's time for us to say goodbye, and thanks to all our listeners. If you have any questions or suggestions for programs that you'd like to see, put it in the comments. I'll be happy to try to find someone who would like to speak to me about whatever it is you'd like to hear about. So thanks so much, Josh.